Hello and welcome to That's Good, Pick It Up, a podcast mostly about golf books. This is Robbie Woodard, the producer, filling in for an intro for Nate Oxman, who has been doing an incredible job talking with his guests about the incredible works of writing that they do. This week's episode is part 3 of his chat with Larry Baush, who has a great biography on Tony Lema called Uncorked. If you want to learn more about this, check out links in the show notes. You can also check out the other podcasts we have with BestBall by visiting bestball.com or following us on social media and YouTube at Golf BestBall. Now, for part 3 of Nate's conversation with Larry Baush, talking about Tony Lema and Uncorked. That's good. Pick it up.
So starting over for Tony probably, I believe, gave him a little bit more determination to win as much as he did in 64. I mean, 64 is just incredible. Just to think that you would play 5 weeks in a row, and one of them included a transatlantic flight before the jet age.
Yeah.
Today's players won't play more than 2 in a row, and so to have that stellar record through that summer of 64, it just must have been exhausting.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he did it in 64 at a time when there were so many great players, right? Nicklaus and Palmer and Player and Billy Casper, and Snead was still playing some, right? And Nelson was still playing a little bit.
Oh, yes. Snead was playing for a long time after that. Venturi, he was running into his carpal tunnel problems kind of at the near end of that. But Tony's win in the British Open did a couple of other things for him. So he got his first Shell's Wonderful World of Golf match after the 63 Masters. They signed him up and he went to Japan and played there. And then he played 2 more before he played Peter Allis in Bermuda, which is where Tony's dad was from.
Oh, wow.
That was played just weeks before the plane crash, and that was when Shell was in beautiful color, and these 2 guys who were friends, they had a great time. And I've got it posted up on YouTube, the match, and it's the most commented post I've got on my channel, and most of the comments on it are about the Bermuda greens. Everybody, I mean, they'd be like putting on today's tee boxes.
Yeah.
So, but he got those Shell's Wonderful World of Golf matches that paid. I mean, you were guaranteed. You got your trip paid, and you were guaranteed a few thousand if you won. You got 5. They upped it to 7 a little bit later, but he also got. He got into, I think it was the second year it was actually held, the World Series of Golf, which pitted the winners of the 4 majors against each other in a 2-day event at Akron, and the winner got $50,000. Well, the winner of Westchester got $40,000.
Right, yeah.
Even though this was an unofficial event, it was a huge payday. And then, and Tony won it. And then just before the 64 season, he played it with his friend Bobby Nichols as his partner in the CBS Golf Classic, which was a series of matches that were filmed in the fall and then broadcast in January and February in the winter, when the sports scene on television back then was kind of a desert during those 2 months. This paid $50,000 a person. And the CBS Golf Classic is really an interesting story. It was the first tournament to use cranes for aerial shots. It mic'd up the players so that you could hear their banner. So Tony and Bobby play really well, and they get into the final match, and they're playing against Bruce Devlin and Bob Charles. And the Lema family gave me the film reel of it, a 16 millimeter film of the final match. So every player, if you played a match in the CBS Golf Classic, would get get a film, and those are the only archives of those matches because the warehouse that CBS stored their copies in burned down and it burned up all the film.
Wow.
Yeah, so one of my goals is to try to get as many of those from the players as I can, so that we can, uh, like we took the one that I got at the final match in '64, took it and had it cleaned up and digitized so we could
Okay.
use it in the movie.
Yeah.
But that final match, well, talking to Bruce Devlin, it's so funny because he just starts giggling when you talk about that match. That match was a 36-hole match, and that match was over on the 13th hole of the second round. So, uh, Charles and Devlin made everything, every putt. And there's one point where you could hear Tony on the film walk over to Nichols and go, God, they're making everything. And so I asked Bruce Devlin about it. Bruce Devlin just giggled. He goes, there was one hole where Charles had like a 15-footer and he had like an 8-footer. Charles said, you don't have to mark your ball. This is going in. And he did. But that would have paid $50,000. So he still makes a great payday there. And he's just really starting to get into the revenue generating
Yeah.
stage of his career. He was getting paid for doing dinner speeches and he he told one dinner crowd, he said, "It's getting so I'm having breakfast in San Francisco, addressing a crowd, and then I fly all day, and here I am in front of you addressing you." So, I mean, and Tony would he was very good about cashing in when the opportunity was there. So he you could find a lot of kind of strange things that he endorsed in the back of golf magazines from that era. He had a heel lift insert that you could put in your golf shoe that would help you shift your weight.
Wow.
So yeah, he struck while the striking was good.
And it's just so unfortunate that, his game is at its peak and he's becoming popular, off the golf course and making a lot of money, and then, the plane crash. Can you talk about those circumstances, which are, really kind of strange? And I don't know if, there are quotes from Fred Corcoran about what happened, outside of the book, but it's kind of, I don't know how he must have felt after, the mishap with double
He felt like he lost his
booking.
son.
Yeah. Can you talk
Corcoran
about the crash?
Yeah. Well, so you started off by saying so he's gotten into his golf game's good. He's making a
Yeah.
lot of money. He actually entered 1966 with a lot of doubt. He had what was probably tendonitis in an elbow,
Okay.
and during the Western Swing, so he had to withdraw at the Lucky International that was played at Harding Park in San Francisco. Tried to play in Phoenix, and the pain was just so great and he was convinced he was going to have to get an operation, and so he withdrew in Phoenix, and was going to fly back to Dallas, which is where he and Betty relocated because it was easier to travel the country from that hub. Um, but at the last minute, his buddy Danny Arnold, who was the producer of Barney Miller television show and had taken Tony under his wing, told him to come to Los Angeles because he knew the doctor who had helped Sandy Koufax with his sore arm. So he goes to Los Angeles, and this doctor interviews him and examines his arm and elbow, and he prescribes this revolutionary experimental drug that I never nailed down entirely and completely, but I am fairly certain that the experimental drug was Tylenol.
Wow.
And so Tony starts taking Tylenol or taking this pill that he was prescribed, and his elbow felt better, got better, and he started playing better in '66. Um, he wins in Oklahoma City, which is Betty's hometown, so he got to do it in front of his in-laws and friends down there. And he played that tournament. He played all 4 rounds, where the only bogey he got was on a hole where he had to add the stroke before signing his card because the host pro had been out watching him and saw him take an illegal drop. So he warned Tony to take the penalty before signing his card. That was the only bogey on in 4 rounds. So he was playing great. So the tour moves along from there, and it's going into the last major of the year, the PGA Championship at Akron, where he won the World Series of Golf. And there are 2 players that played Akron just great. Tony was one of them, and Al Geiberger was the other one, because they would play every year. They would play the American Golf Classic at Firestone too. So in the week leading up to the PGA, there was an airline strike by the mechanics, and it hit some of the airlines, but not all of the airlines. But it made traveling a headache, and it really made travel a headache after all the players arrived in Akron for the PGA. So Tony arranges for a plane to fly him and Betty and Butch Baird from Akron up to just south of Chicago for a fundraiser that was being put on by Buick, and Buick was one of his sponsors. So he had not only won the Buick Open twice, but he got a car in every city that the tour played in. He got a car for his use that week. He got a couple cars a year. He won a couple cars the year that he won the Thunderbird and the Buick. He gets the Thunderbird and a convertible Buick, which was all tricked out. It was gold colored, had a golf ball on a tee up on the front of the front fenders. So he was going to play in this fundraiser, hired a plane to take him up there. Well, the 4th round, he didn't play that good in the PGA, and in the 4th round, he learns that the plane that he had originally contracted for, which was it was a kind of a mid-sized private plane. It could take the 3 of them, all of their equipment and luggage, and the pilot. And Butch Baird had a pilot's license, so he was going to be the co-pilot on the trip. Well, he learned that plane had been switched out for a plane that would fit Tony and Betty on a bench seat in the back, and barely enough room to stuff the golf clubs and luggage in behind that seat, and of course no room for Butch Baird. So he leaves the clubhouse and walks back out on the course up the 18th fairway where Butch is just completing his round, and he tells Butch that his wife Betty had arranged to get an airline ticket, a scarce, how she found it I don't know, but she found a scarce airline ticket for him to fly to Chicago. He explained the mix-up with the planes, and Butch said, yeah, that's fine. And Butch used that ticket and flew into Chicago, arriving pretty late at night. Tony goes to the wrong airport in Akron, and so there's first of all, it's a mad dash to get himself all packed up, his locker emptied, and he and Betty dash off to the wrong airport. And when they get there, they find out their mistake, so now they have to dash to the other airport. And when they get there, he discovers that the pilot is a woman. And you got to remember, this was the mid 1960s. Women's liberation was unfortunately still something that was slowly coming about, but there were still some feelings about, I don't know if I want to fly with a woman pilot. And he told his friend Johnny Pott exactly that. He goes, I love women and I love doing lots of things with women, but I don't know if I want I don't want a woman flying my plane.
Yeah, I remember that quote from the book.
Yeah. And then he gets on the plane, and before he settles himself on that bench seat, which must have been pretty cramped for him because he was pretty tall, he kind of sticks his head out the door and waves his arms to the people seeing him off on the tarmac. He goes, wish me luck.
Oh,
And yeah, and they get on the plane, and it's a pretty uneventful flight until they get to they're making their approach to the airport. And so the approach to the airport, they're going to fly over a golf course and circle into the airport, which abuts the golf course. And the pilot's husband is down on the ground at the airport, and he sees the plane coming in, and he hears it sputtering like it's running out of gas. And it does start to coast, and the pilot has radioed the tower, "Mayday, mayday! I've got to put this down. I'm engine failure." And she tries to land it on the golf course, and it hits a mound that's in front of a green, and there's a water hazard to the left. The plane flips over on its nose and goes into the lake pond, and explodes. Well, and then catches on fire. Well, the fact that it explodes and catches on fire led me through my research, and also talking with Butch Baird, who's a pilot. He said the same thing. He says, it explodes. So this plane is equipped with 2 gas tanks, and you flip over on approach from the tank you've been using for the flight to the full tank. And so she either flipped the toggle over and flipped it back, or failed to flip it over to the full tank, because the explosion is caused by gas fumes, which would be from the empty tank. The big fire is caused by the gasoline that's in the full tank. At the course, there were a lot of witnesses to the crash, and so the fire department was called, and responded quite quickly. But for some reason, they didn't try to put out the fire for quite a lengthy time, and I don't think it really would have mattered because of the explosion. They fished his remains out and his luggage out. Chichi Rodriguez had to go to the morgue to identify the body. In his golf bag, they found all this cash, both U.S. dollars and British pounds. And I think, if I remember right, it totaled well over $10,000.
Wow.
So he had reached a point where he could just throw $10,000 in his golf bag. Yeah. So then the word gets up to the reception that they're having up in Chicago for this fundraising event. It was a big pro-am event, and he had his a kid that he had taken under his wing out on the tour, because during the summer on the PGA Tour during this era, you had to use local kids as your caddy if school wasn't in session.
Mhm.
So he had found this kid that they worked together really well, and they would often bribe the caddy master, or Tony would fire caddies until he got um, Winner's. I can't remember Winner's first name. He went by a different first name back then than he did for the rest of his life. Anyway, he was going to meet Tony up there, and he was at the reception, and an announcement was made. Pretty much took all the wind out of the reception. Everybody was understandably very sad. They went ahead and played the tournament the next day. I think they voted on it, and the players voted on it, and they all figured that this is what Tony would want him to do. And as but Butch Barrett, he gets in really, really late at night into Chicago, um, on this flight, United flight, and so he's headed out in the morning. He didn't go to the reception. He's headed out in the morning, and he learns about the crash by seeing a headline in a newspaper stand. And he just couldn't believe it. I mean, it's kind of like he was Waylon Jennings
Mhm.
on the Buddy Holly flight.
Yeah.
Waylon gives up the seat because Buddy's got a cold, and Buddy says something like, "Hey, enjoy that bus ride," and Waylon has quite the response back to that
Mhm.
probably affected him the rest of his life,
Yeah.
and could explain his wild drinking. But anyway, um, so Butch goes to the course and he goes out on the practice tee and he sees one of his buddies on the practice tee and he walks up to say hi. And this guy looks like he's seen a ghost because the co-pilot's last name was Bard, and his buddy had misread it or heard it on a radio report or something like that and thought it was Butch. Butch was supposed to be on that plane. So, so Butch said he said he just looked like he'd seen a ghost. Um, they fly the bodies back to San Francisco, and funeral's held a few days later. It's just a massive event. Had I think it was about 4 or 5 Catholic fathers doing the ceremony, and people were crammed into the church, into the vestibule, on the porch of the church, and down the sidewalk on both sides. So I've seen an aerial photograph of it, and it was just a massive crowd that went to the funeral. And after his death, both the Howard Cosell interview, that's a 60-minute interview and is one of the most insightful into Tony and Tony's lifestyle at that time. That aired with Ken Venturi doing a little preamble before the interview happens. The interview is taking place out at Westchester. So it's in a golf cart. It's on a tee out on the course. It's on the deck overlooking the course where he and Howard have champagne at the end. So Ken Venturi gives a little preamble before they air this event, and Cosell talks a little bit about Tony's accident and dying just a few weeks earlier.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happens with the Shell's Wonderful World of Golf with Peter Allis. Shell contacted Tony's mother and said, um, should, should we run this or should we not run this? And Cleo said, no, for Tony would want you to run it. You should run it. And Tony had taken the whole family to his father's homeland on this trip. It's kind of a family vacation. So it's kind of weird how months after his death, his charisma was being shown on television. So it was a sad experience. I mean, for me, I remember watching the 1964 uh, Open Championship on Wide World of Sports a
Mhm.
week later. That's how they broadcast it back in
Okay.
those days. And then I can remember that Tony was the third experience for me in dealing with death. And that's from about 1962 to 1966. I had my grandfather die, then the assassination of JFK and Tony Lema, and these all three were very early impressions of death for me.
Yeah, I
It
bet.
kind of affected me a lot.
Yeah. I know it's hard to speculate, but what do you think his career could have been like had he finished it now?
That's one of my favorite questions. I've asked it of everybody that we interviewed for the movie. Um, he and Betty wanted to start a family, and he told Howard Cosell that he was going to come off the tour once they started a family. They were probably going to have to adopt because they had been trying to have a family for quite a while, and before discovering that Tony was sterile.
Mhm.
Um, Now, one of the reasons for sterility is excessive smoking, and if you quit smoking, it could go away. Well, Tony was never able to kick the habit.
Yeah, Palmer
He's
tried to get him to, right?
Yep, he smoked all the time. But so anyway, they would have they would have adopted. They wanted to have kids. At that point, he said he would come off the tour. So first of all, before he comes off the tour, I think he would have won at least another major championship.
Yeah.
I actually think he would have won 2 because he absolutely loved the Masters and he absolutely loved the US Open. And he would say whenever he was asked that those were 2 of his goals is to win those. And I thoroughly believe that he would have met that goal. Um, who knows how many more regular tour events he would have won. He's one of those players that could get on a roll and win quite a few of them in a short time. So I think if he wouldn't have had the crash, he would have had a record that was 3 times as great as it is now. But I also think that he would have beaten not Ken Venturi, but he would have been in the same mold as Ken Venturi as a television broadcaster. He actually did some part-time work after his rounds in tournaments where he wasn't in contention and wouldn't be on, would finish up and climb the tower on the 18th hole and play guest to the announcer there for the last half of the broadcast, that kind of a thing. Palmer did that a little bit too. But I think he would have been great at that, and it would have been perfect for him. He'd still be able to get out, travel with the guys, feel a part of the tour. And again, I think he would have been great at that.
Obviously, if he would have continued on, and finished his career, he would have been in the World Golf Hall of Fame. What do you think is holding him back because he didn't get to, see his career through?
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get him there. But so the World Golf Hall of Fame has criteria where you have to win so many regular events, so many major events to be considered. And before like those titles that I was talking about that were retroactively made official,
Yes.
haven't really kicked into for his total events. He comes up with just one major, so that's just a little bit short of the threshold. I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 majors that you need to win to get into the. But they also have a distinguished category and a I don't know how exactly they term it, but it's for the older players. And so he could qualify in at least 2 of those categories.
Yeah.
It goes back to what you were saying, though, that these kind of guys, for his length of time that he played on the tour, they're easily forgotten.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly believe that, and I'm hoping that that's between my book, but more importantly, the documentary, because I'll reach way more people, that this will happen. I'm 100% confident that he will get inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame.
Great. I sure hope so.
Yeah.
The book is called Uncorked: The Life and Times of Champagne Tony Lema. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of it.
You can get it on Amazon, and you can also get it at tourbackspin.com. Also would like to put in a plug for my newsletter, tourbackspin.com. It's free. It's on Substack. It's under larrybosch.substack.com. There's a free edition. There's a paid content for those that want to pay and go deeper into each week. But it's a fun little trip down memory lane for people that remember golf from the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Well, that's it for this 3-part series with Nate Oxman talking with Larry Baush about Tony Lema's journey in life and golf and his book, Uncorked. It has been an incredible series, and as always, Nate Oxman is crushing it with these interviews. I hope you will follow along to other podcasts in the BestBall Network by visiting bestball.com. But again, this is That's Good, Pick It Up, a podcast mostly about golf books, hosted by Nate Oxman. I hope you guys like it, and I hope you continue to listen to the great interviews and stories from Nate with his guest. That's Good, Pick It Up.